Jake Tapper talking to Mark Regev. He's the senior advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was on with Mehdi Hassan, I don't know, a week and a half ago. It was actually one of the last interviews that Mehdi Hassan did before his shows were canceled on MSNBC, where this guy claimed that there was no evidence that children had been killed
by Israel.
Just want to be clear on that.
He said those are the images Hamas wants.
I don't know how this guy keeps getting invited on television, but at the very least, at least there is you can almost sense that Jake Tapper is sort of like, we're not going to do this anymore, because a CNN producer lost about 9 members of his family in Gaza. And where are we going to pick this up? Just can we pick it up just before he says something to that effect? Yeah,
I mean, it gets a little heated at a certain point because Tapper takes issue with the fact that Regev is somewhat like blaming the victims.
The crossfire, but we're working.
Pause it for 1 second. Incidentally, he keeps saying crossfire. We know that before a single IDF soldier crossed into Gaza, thousands of children were dead from the bombing. That's not crossfire.
Yeah.
That's not crossfire. Go ahead.
Gazan civilian caught up in the crossfire. But we're working against a brutal enemy who deliberately wants to use Gaza's civilians as a human shield to protect its war machine. And it makes our job just so much more.
I mean, look at this claim. No, but wait a second. Look at this claim. Put aside the capabilities of Hamas, which are, of course, rudimentary relative to the Israeli government. But how can you continue to claim, with well over half of the population displaced, that they are using them as human shields? They are not where they were before. How do you even make this argument? You're simply saying their very existence means that they're human shields. How could this argument not be applied to any civilian population anywhere? They've all moved.
And it's incredible, too, how the Israeli government uses the forced concentration of Palestinians in Gaza against them. Because it's so densely populated. Why is Gaza so densely populated? Let's read a history book for once.
Go ahead.
As a human shield to protect its war machine. And it makes our job just so much more difficult. But I think, and I've seen the numbers, and I can't share with you yet, but when this is over, we can have a serious discussion when the fog of war is behind us. But I am convinced, though every single civilian death, and especially children, is a tragedy, and we don't want to see it, in comparative numbers, if you compare Israel to perfection, of course we'll fall short. But if you compare Israel to other Western armies who've been fighting terrorists in built-up...
Pause it, I'm so sorry. If you compare it to other conflicts, you want to compare it to a Western conflict right now, you can. You can look up that within the first, 30 days or something like that, the Israeli government killed more children than the entire war in the Russian-Ukraine war, right, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So there are quite comparable statistics that you could use in this point, but keep going.
But if you compare Israel to other Western armies who've been fighting terrorists in built-up urban areas, I think Israel will not come out badly in the comparison. On the contrary, I think it will be seen that the IDF really has done everything that is humanly possible to try to safeguard innocent civilians.
It's very hard to believe that, especially on a day when one of our producers lost 9 members of his family who were not members of Hamas, not members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not members of any group, just 9 people just trying to live their lives.
First of all, I extend my sorrow to him and my sympathies. But if I saw your report correctly, and please correct me if I say something wrong, that happened in northern Gaza, in Gaza City. where a month ago we already asked all the civilians to leave. And most of them did. If there was like 1,200,000 people there was only a couple of tens of thousands left. And one has to ask, yes, they had ample opportunity to leave. I don't know what happened. I don't have the specific circumstances. I know there's deadly combat going on now in the north, still between these IDF and Hamas terrorists, yes? And we don't want to see anyone caught up in the crossfire, but why didn't they heed the advice and leave the area?
You can't blame them. There's now
I don't
fighting,
blame them.
But you can't, there's fighting in the south now. Where are, I mean, I've been asking this since October 7th. Where are these people supposed to go?
So at the beginning, it was easier because the fighting was concentrated in the north, and we just asked people to move south, and that was relatively simple. Yes, I'm not saying totally simple, but relatively simple. Just go south of the river. But now we're being more specific because it is more complicated in the south. We've actually designated areas in the south which are safer areas, which are especially, there's a number of them. We've shared the maps with the United States. It's been shared.
Well, it's good
also
that
with
the maps are shared with the United States. How is this information being, people can't, it's just.
Leaflets and QR codes. Yeah, it's, God, I had some point. I totally lost it. Yeah.
And it's amazing.
$24.99. You can buy the app.
It's amazing because in a lot of ways, Jake Tapper, I think, has been both in this conflict, but prior as well, along with Dana Bash, some of the most, ardent kind of impartial so-called news anchors who have been pretty charitable and credulous towards Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And even this,
they have lost Jake Tapper.
Like, he can't stomach this.
No,
he can't.
in fact, he just sits there and listens and then doesn't even say anything. He just says goodbye.
Right.
We don't need to watch the rest of this. It's just absurd. But I mean, it's the skepticism I think that we're going to start to see. Hopefully, is going to increase as well. It should.
Yeah, and the point I wanted to make actually is when, there are photos and reports of what that was like to transfer from the north to the south. They were on foot. Like, they had to be on foot and take all their belongings with them. They're elderly in wheelchairs, and the IDF walked behind them and said they couldn't look back.